Well, thanks for being my first in person.
For sure.
I'm so excited. We're in your space, which is so cool. So if we're on YouTube, you can see your, what would you call this? Your waiting room? Your lobby?
Yeah, it's like a little living room.
Living room? Yeah.
That's the intention, for sure.
So cozy. I have so many things that I want to chat with you about, but before we get into it, would love for you to just introduce yourself to people.
For sure. My name is Dr. Chris Cole. I'm a chiropractor here in Dallas. Born and raised here. Went to Parker University to get my doctorate in chiropractic. I graduated in 2020, fall of 2020. It was like the perfect timing to come out of school and kind of put principles of chiropractic into play. And after I graduated, I went to Nashville and joined some of my friends out there at their practice for about 9 or 10 months. And then moved back to Dallas and started my practice here.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Did you have to finish online?
No. So the last little bit of chiropractic school is basically like an internship. So we went and practiced at a local office here in Dallas. I think mine was in Mansfield. And at the time, they were deciding which businesses were essential. And chiropractic happened to be one of those things that were allowed to continue. And because of that, I got to continue to do my internship, which was really nice.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't imagine what that was like. I have so many questions.
Mm-hmm.
But first, when you went into chiropractic school, did you know that you wanted to practice the type of chiropractic that you offer now?
Definitely not. To be honest, going into chiropractic school, I didn't have any concept of what chiropractic really was. When I was at OU for undergrad, I had a class where we had a chiropractor come in and talk about what he did as a practitioner. And he had said like he would get to practice 2 days a week and then go play golf like the rest of the week and get to work with Olympic athletes. And at the time I was really into movement. So that was kind of my initial concept. I was like, wow, that sounds great. I want to work with athletes. I'd love to only practice 2 days a week and then get to hang out the rest of the time.
Yeah. So
that was my initial draw. And then a year or so into school, I had a couple of experiences that really changed how I viewed the body, changed how I viewed healing, just really changed how I oriented myself to life and kind of started me on this, you could say, journey of what I do now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I have more questions, but I've gotten so intrigued that I forgot my opening question. So what is a daily ritual or habit of yours?
Right now, it's getting up and going outside and getting morning sun. And with that, I'll either journal or I'll read a book, whatever it is. Yeah.
Are you still doing Harry Potter?
No, I'm currently reading the 3rd Game of Thrones book.
Oh, very nice. Yeah. I know. I keep up on your Instagram. I'm like, what are we reading today? I love that.
It's currently that. Yeah.
Nice.
It's been a necessity to read fiction like that, you know?
I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah.
Okay, but circling back, because I'm curious. So how did you learn about Vitalistic Chiropractic care?
Yeah.
Was that a chapter in chiropractic school? How did you come across it?
Definitely a chapter for sure. That whole first year of chiropractic school, you're in the thick of learning the basic sciences, right? You're learning about anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, neurology, etc. And just to be honest, in chiropractic school, there's very little true chiropractic, right? You learn how to adjust people, you learn how to palpate or touch people's systems, but there's really not any of the juice that makes up really true, you could say, vitalistic chiropractic.
Yeah.
And so when I had those experiences, it really led me to start to learn about kind of the history of chiropractic from the past, 140 or 50 years or so, 120 years, and really dive into what it meant to be a chiropractor and kind of live a chiropractic lifestyle.
Sure.
So it's funny that we even have to differentiate vitalistic chiropractic care because that's its foundation, right? Is vitalism, and that's just recognizing that there is an inherent and an innate intelligence or life force in all things, which isn't necessarily unique to chiropractic, but is like the bedrock or like the foundation of what it is we do and how we view the body and how we view things.
Yeah.
Yes.
So can you dive into that a little more?
For sure.
Because I know people are going to be like, okay, I get it. Like your vital signs, your life force.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
So you just give people life? Like what separates, or maybe not separates since it's the foundation, but like what designates what you do as Vitalistic?
Yeah. Well, definitely separates not just chiropractic, like how I practice, but it also separates from, I think, really all of Western allopathic care, right? A lot of Western practices see the body as different individual parts that work together like a machine, which is true to some degree, but chiropractic really views all of life kind of as an expression of this life force or intelligence. And we recognize that that is already there, and that there's nothing that necessarily needs to be added to it or added to the body or added to our experience of life, because it's already there and it's already within us, right? As like a healing potentiality or like a healing force. It's like it's already there. It's just waiting to be expressed. And so as a chiropractor, my job is to help people clear the interferences to that life force through the adjusting process. And in chiropractic, we view that, you could say, life force as being expressed through the nervous system primarily.
Got it.
And when we adjust people and we work with people's systems, it's like we're creating greater states of integrity or greater states of freedom or regulation, or there's a lot of, I don't know, different words to kind of describe the same thing, freedom in the nervous system, so that the life force can be fully expressed.
Cool.
Which is the kind of the main juice of what we do.
Yeah. So, because I know, for context, when I'm here, usually I'm like the first one here, and then somebody else will come midway through the session, and you are doing completely different things. Yes. So how are you, like, how does it work for you when I come in, lay on the table, and you're like, let's just figure out what I'm going to do? Like, how do you know?
Yeah. Well, I don't know anything necessarily. I think the whole kind of basis of this work is one, it's intuitive in a sense, right? And I'm being led and directed by you and your system and what's coming up in the moment in your visit. I think of adjusting as meeting people where they're at and matching the tone or matching the current expression of your system. And ultimately what we're doing is not just freeing up energy, but in a sense it is that, right? We're working with how our systems have accumulated and how they've registered energy over time based on our current experiences in life, right? So when we experience stress or trauma, it's like there's an energetic kind of holding that happens, and over time that can register itself more physically, right, in these kind of physical patterns that show up in our systems that end up leading to symptoms or disease.
For sure.
And in our visit, it's very spontaneous in working with how your system has, again, registered energy. And it's like I say it sometimes, it's like we're peeling back layers of the onion in an honoring and intuitive way as the layers are ready to be pulled back. In a sense. It's
really cool. I remember one time I was here. So when I first started, and you can say if this is typical, I came every week. And then it was 2 weeks, and now we're at like a 3-week situation. So is that typical, or does it kind of depend on the person?
It's totally dependent. It's totally dependent. And it's not so much based on pain or symptoms in terms of the consistency, though that sometimes comes up. It's really dependent on how, I don't know, physically free somebody is, for sure. And I think in the most perfect world, how much trust somebody has in their system, right, is really is how I would recommend care. You know, it's like at first, a lot of times we're working on building one, integrity in the nervous system and kind of our regulatory capacity to handle stress and to handle life in a way. And there's a very direct correlation to how much trust we have in the things that come up in life, you know, and in our bodies. And the more integrity that we kind of rebuild in the system, and how much, you could say, trust somebody has in their system, the more it becomes maintenance in a sense, right? It's like we've created this nice foundation in our system, and my goal for people is so that they have a nice sense of like, okay, I'm feeling stuck, or I'm not seeing something quite clearly that's coming up in my life or in my system, and I need support.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of the basis. I don't ever want to be like a Band-Aid, or like be somebody's savior, or like be somebody's fixer. It's like, this work is very much meant to help people resource themselves, so that when things come up, it's like, okay, what do I need in this moment?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Totally. I remember when I first started coming, I realized as soon as I lay down on the table that like I'm so tense. And you were like, can you just relax? Can you relax your legs? Can you stop? I was holding my butt cheeks, like just so tense. And that was something that I was then realizing I'm standing, getting ready in the morning, and I'm doing the same thing. And I'm doing dishes, and I'm doing the same thing. And I was like, when is my body ever able to just chill? And it was such a conscious awareness that you brought to that, because that's just was my base. You know, that was just normal. And so it's been so interesting and challenging to literally retrain how I stand. Like, that's crazy.
Well, I think another way of describing what I do is not just in chiropractic, but I think in all, like, you know, healing facilitator work, however you want to describe it. Even in yoga, you know, it's very similar. It's like, how can we make the unconscious conscious? Right. And when we're working kind of in this way of clearing up patterns that our systems have held or have, you know, bound over time, those things become unconscious, right? It's like a brain-based survival kind of tool or tactic, right? It's like the brain will kind of disconnect us from the places that are too painful to feel, or that are too much for us to handle, maybe in a given moment where we didn't have support. In a sense, right? That's kind of the whole trauma thing, is like not necessarily the experience itself, but what happens within you. And so in chiropractic, it's like we're making the unseen seen. And in a sense, disrupting patterns that we've all kind of accumulated, you could say, for sure. There's you know, another way of viewing the body is it's like an expression of consciousness ultimately, right? And our systems bind energy and tension, you could say, kind of based on the inherent consciousness behind it, right? And there's a lot of different healing modalities or practices that have a very specific, you could say, understanding of how the body registers that energy and information, right? So you think of like the whole chakra system and the inherent information behind that, right? It's like, this whole space has to do with speaking your truth. And what did Kayla say? Like expressing your will, in a sense, right? And so, I don't know, there's just a whole bunch of different examples that have been created over time, and viewing the body as inherent information, you know?
Really cool stuff. I've been dealing with pain on my right leg. You know this. Every time I come in, I'm like, it was good this week, it was bad this week. And one time you were like, are you trying to do something with the masculine? And I was like, kind of, because I'm balancing the world of being a business owner, but also I'm about to be a wife. And really trying to lean into the feminine of being someone's wife instead of being on my own and my business owner, and the masculine and just doing my own thing. But now I'm like, no, I can be taken care of and a little softer. And you're like, are you like trying to release? Because I think your body is like really holding on to the masculine. And I was like, actually, yes, very much. And I was knowingly doing that. Like a lot of work around getting rid of my last name has been a lot. There's like so much around that I'm doing consciously, that I was like, well, maybe it makes sense that this is showing up in the body. And I've never had this type of issue before.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's no rules first and foremost.
Yeah.
It's like we as practitioners and even as, people who are trying to study this, we try and make the most sense of it that we can, right, through our kind of educated faculties. But at the end of the day, it's like none of us really know anything about anything, which is great. And as a practitioner, I just feel called to share whatever comes up and whatever comes through in an honoring way. And I don't know, I think stuff like that, it's important not to get caught up on, but it's a really beautiful thing if we can step back and be like, okay, well, my right side might be related to my masculine kind of energy and how it's expressing, because we all have both, right? The feminine and masculine. Am I living too much in my masculine? And if I am, that's okay. But how can I soften, like you're already doing, right? Which is so beautiful. Or am I not living in the masculine enough, right? So it's like, okay, well, it can get very heady very quick. And I think the most potent thing that we can do is just kind of step back and honor and be like, okay, well, what really resonates with me as I'm kind of cultivating my self-awareness and kind of self-understanding. For sure. Which is kind of the name of the game.
Yeah. And so kind of going back to the idea that trauma and stress and our interactions in our life get stored in the body, how does chiropractic care help to regulate or release or have you return to freedom or
for sure. Well, I think of the basis of kind of the goal of chiropractic being reducing interference, right? Ultimately is like an overarching goal. Another way of thinking about that is, to what degree are we dysregulated and living in maybe either a sympathetic state or living in kind of in that further not lowest, but maybe most primal kind of branch of our nervous system, and being kind of the down and out or the freeze or the collapse or the fatigue or whatever, however you want to describe it.
Yeah.
So I think of chiropractic as being, one, first and foremost, helping create safety in the body and kind of in the world of trauma. It's like that's really the goal, is like how can we reintroduce compassion, safety, empathy, right, and support ultimately, right? Because when we go through maybe a traumatic experience, what our nervous system is most seeking is compassion and support, right? And when that's absent, that oftentimes is where that kind of energetic binding occurs. Right? The basis of trauma being our systems accumulate energy in a moment of survival, and if that energy can't be expressed, then that's where kind of the binding pattern occurs, and that's where the downshift into the sympathetic system and then the downshift into the freeze pattern happens, right? Is like when we don't feel socially supported, right? That's kind of the essence of that ventral vagal kind of open, safe branch, is social connection and social support. So in chiropractic, we're first and foremost working to create safety, and over time, it's like we're slowly and progressively helping a system potentially come out of the freeze state back up into the sympathetic mobilization state, and then further up into the ventral vagal, open, connected, safe, seeing the world as a place of curiosity or a place of adventure or spontaneity or whatever. And that happens sometimes very immediately, right? Just kind of depending on the readiness of the person. And sometimes it takes a long time, right? And I tell people, it's like, I'm only seeing them for 30 or 40 minutes at a time, and we're doing quite a bit of work in helping to create support. But there's also a very active process that has to occur outside of this space, and like, okay, well, how are you continuing to support yourself when you leave here, right? It's like this work is about creating space, and when you leave, how do we maintain the space that we create together?
I've noticed the last time I was here, someone was saying that they were having a lot of pain and trouble sleeping, and you were like, well, what are you doing before bed? And I love how you weren't just like, oh man, where does it hurt? But you were really trying to make that connection of, okay, I can do this here, but what are you doing to help mitigate the sleep situation?
100%.
I thought that was cool.
It's super important. It's like, that's really where the real healing and shifts occur, is like the time between visits.
Yeah.
It's like I just said, we're creating space for people to be more in connection with their bodies. And how do we continue to maintain that connection outside of the work that we do together here? And another piece of my work is helping people see that stuff like that isn't necessarily bad. And I think we put a lot of kind of good or bad, like moral judgment value on the things that we experience, like pain or discomfort or hormonal dysregulation or like circulatory, I don't know, all that stuff to me and in this chiropractic model is just an adaptation that our systems make in response to the things that we do.
Yeah.
Right. And my hope and goal as a chiropractor is to help. My friend Gabby says it really nicely. It's like creating more body literacy.
Yeah.
Right. Like, how do we come into more rapport with the body so that when things come up, it's like, okay, this isn't bad, but this is just how my system is expressing itself in this moment. How can I bring more attention or awareness to something in my patterns throughout the day, so that when I go to sleep at night, it's like you lay down and you pass out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think something that I've noticed from working with you is that, at least for me, I didn't originally come to you because of the leg pain. I wasn't really experiencing any pain. I just really wanted nervous system regulation, and I'd never heard of the type of chiropractic that you do, or any practitioner aside from like meditation or breath work bringing awareness to the nervous system. So I was like, I need to figure out what's happening here. And it wasn't like an immediate, like I came here and my nervous system was regulated after one session. It was definitely an ongoing thing. But when the first time that it really clicked that this is really making a larger impact, aside from, the micro moments that we had, was my dad was like, "Are you still anxious?" And I was like, "No, like, not at all." Because I know, like, I guess that growing up, anxiety for me was not really talked about, but I was just coined as a worrier. She just worries. She's just a worrier. She just worries a lot. Now I'm like, I grow on full-fledged anxiety. And we were talking about it. He was like, "Are you so anxious? Like, how are you doing?" And I was like, honestly, no. Like, I have a lot of tools in my toolkit now of breathing in the morning, theta healing, meditation, all the things. But I was like, I haven't even been doing that. Like, and it's crazy. The work is good when you're not just like keeping like your eyes on it and like, oh, today I had this much improvement. But when you're like, I haven't thought about this in a long time. It's cool. It's really cool.
Well, I think it's less about me and more about you.
Totally.
It's like, it's a total testament to you and the work that you're doing, and like occupying the space that we create together. It's, I don't have any claim to like fixing people or like removing your anxiety or anything like that. It's like, that's to be present and free is our natural state. Truly, for a lot of us, it's like, that doesn't seem so realistic, because a lot of us really experience that. And I think for me, it's like, my job is just to help you remember your factory setting, which is like total freedom and total presence and total conviction in your kind of authentic self and how you express yourself, so it says a lot more about you than it does me.
I mean, I've been trying. Let me tell you, I've been trying. Every time I come in, I'm like, I'm doing the artist way. I'm journaling. I'm doing a parasite cleanse.
Yeah.
Like, okay. How can I help?
Yeah.
So
cool.
We're trying. I know that listeners are going to want to know, what do you do? I know that you said reading and morning sun or journaling has been helpful in your routine, but like, what have you done to help continue the work outside of your own practice?
For sure. I think for me, first and foremost, like working with you guys is some of the most, not just healing, but like attuning things that I can do. My teacher, he says, he kind of describes his own kind of thing. It's like when people come in to see him, they ask him who adjusts you, and he says, you do. And in that way, it's like, I didn't really resonate with that until like my second year of practice. It's like, I heard this in yoga. When you're on your mat, it's like your whole life is on display. And for me, when I'm working with people and when things come up, it's like this work isn't not challenging. Like it's the most challenging thing that I've ever done. And when things come up and I'm working with people, my own stuff comes up, and in that way, it's like it is an adjustment because I'm having to, in real time, kind of clear that out and soften it and let go of any of the kind of ego stuff that comes up when I'm working with somebody, and in that way, it's like a really quick return to my heart, and kind of in that intuitive faculty.
Sure.
So first and foremost, being here with you guys is easily one of the most potent things that I do for myself. For sure, being outside, which is tough here in Dallas because there's not a lot of nature. For those of you who don't live here, there's not a lot to do in terms of hiking or being outside.
Yeah.
So really just kind of dedicating time to being outside as much as I can. That's where I feel most connected, for sure. There's a little park right down the street from where I live that I go to all the time. It's really great. Journaling, how you mentioned the artist way. Like I don't do morning pages every single morning, but that is certainly like one of the most potent things that I can do for myself, for sure. What else? Yeah, those are kind of the big ones.
I mean, that's a good amount of stuff you got going on.
I'm kind of at the point where I feel less is more.
Yeah.
Always. And keeping it simple, doing things that are really simple and slow and I don't know, restorative like that. Is really nice.
It's so important in our world of everything fast paced, everything go. That has been a huge lesson for me, especially as a business owner, and feeling like I should be posting on social media. I should be reaching out to this business to see if they want to collab. Like, I should be planning things. And just like being like, no, because if I'm in that state and then I have to go see a client and hold space for them, but I'm thinking about all the other things that need to go on outside, I'm not serving them either. So it's crazy how much slowing down has been helpful for me. And I'm sure it would be for a lot of people.
For sure. Well, it's so funny, it's like our culture and our society isn't set up for slowing down and like this true kind of healing work. It's really, in a sense, like the antithesis. And it's very, I don't know, this sounds kind of like dramatic, but very rebellious in a way of like slowing down and doing less and not participating in like the ongoing like capitalistic thing, but also at the same time, like honoring and acknowledging that there is some level of like exchange when it comes to your business, you know? So it's like a really fine line of like doing what you really feel called to do, but at the same time, like not falling into the patterns of our current kind of way of life, it's a real challenge for sure.
So when you're seeing clients, are most people coming to you for traditional of like, I have neck pain, can you fix this? Or are more people finding out the crux of what you do and coming for nervous system regulation? Like how are people entering your space?
I'd say it's a nice mix. Nice. I have a lot of people who are coming for symptom care, which is fine. And I have a lot of people who come for like this work, and how people are finding out about the space in me, I don't really know, because I don't do a lot of social media at the moment. I do some, but I don't do a lot. I trust that it's a lot of resonance and a lot of people will show up because they're supposed to be here. Kind of a feel, Cool. So a nice mix for sure. And I love working with both because on one end, it's like people are ripe and ready and it's like it's the perfect time. And in the same vein, kind of in the other realm where people are seeking symptom relief or symptom care, it's like they're still here for a reason. And I love being able to share like this non-traditional, non-Western kind of mindset of like, well, your system is having these things come up for a reason, right? And they're meaningful and some people really resonate with that and some people don't, but it's all good,
Totally.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that very early on that you used to see a lot of families and a lot of kids. And I remember sitting here and watching you do this work on a baby.
Sure.
And I was like, how's he doing that? I wasn't like staring or like watching, so I wasn't paying much attention, but I knew that there was a baby next to me. Yeah. And so, how is it different when you're seeing whole families? And I'll start there.
Okay. Well, the intention stays the same. It still is all about minimizing interference in babies specifically on a very physical level. They're so new and there's not a lot of conditioning or like experience, so it feels very just helping kind of clear residual tension that might come up from birth or might come up from kind of the first, I don't know, little bits of life that might be not in their biological capacity, like a lot of kind of birth experiences are. So a lot of times it is working with kind of the little energetic or you could say neuroenergetic tension that comes up in their system from their birth experience. And in working with babies, because there's not a lot of conditioning, it's like their systems lead the way. There's no really interference. So their systems move very spontaneously. They move very intuitively in how they kind of release. I don't know, you see babies do it all the time, and how they move and how they open and how they kind of release tension in that way. So for me, it is really just following and kind of, I would say, amplifying what they're already doing in a session, so in that way it's very, I would for sure say gentle, very honoring, very gentle. There aren't any like big pops or cracks or movements or anything like that. Like I think some people have this image of like you adjust babies or kids the same way that you adjust adults, which is not at all that in any way. So it's very slow and kind of spontaneous and intuitive for sure. Cool. And I love working with families, especially in like a family visit, because kids mirror their parents.
Shock, a surprise.
A surprise, so it's like when on a couple planes, it's like when kids and babies are in the presence of their parents being in this nice, open, kind of regulated state, it naturally carries over to how they hold themselves in a way and how their nervous systems are kind of mirroring and surveying the environment, right? When mom and dad feel safe and open and connected, the natural effect is for their kids to experience the same thing, So I think in that way, it's like so nice and foundational, because they're off the bat, kids are learning how to, one, regulate themselves because their parents are doing it. And two, especially when mom and dad are kind of in the realm of trusting their bodies and knowing that health and life come from within, it's like their kids are set up to start to see the world and their bodies the same. It's like when things come up, they can start to trust that it's all good, even though it's uncomfortable, it's like, it's okay.
I can only imagine. I taught in my former career, I was a teacher.
Oh, wow.
I taught middle school, which was wild. And I just think about like the amount of time we said they need like nervous system regulation, but that's not, I taught English. I was not in the health realm at all. And of course, we would send them to the counselor, and that was amazing. They'd be able to like verbally talk about things. But I always was wondering what impact would it be if they like felt safe in their own body or their environment or, fill in the blank. And so that's what I was thinking about when you were saying that. I was like, oh my gosh, a lot of these kids that have behavioral issues, whatever. A lot of that just stems from them not feeling safe.
For sure.
And so I can only imagine how beneficial the work that you do.
Incalculable. Really, it's like if we view all things that come up in people's systems as an expression, right, or as an adaptation, it makes total sense that we would obviously support their mental well-being, but also their you could say kind of expression of the physical well-being, right? And I don't know, that's a whole other conversation of like, is all of that really set up for our kids to thrive, and
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole other.
Oh, you mean being
podcast.
30 kids sardined in a classroom meant for 12?
Right. Without moving, without expressing.
Yeah.
All of that. Yeah, right.
Fun times.
Yes.
Yeah. Next podcast episode,
Yes.
we'll tackle the
That's a
education
deep dive.
system. But for this one, the other thing that I thought is really cool that just, I'm sure I like consciously knew that you can support people during pregnancy, but I got to see it the last time I was here.
Yeah.
So one, I know that during pregnancy, people are told there's so many things that they can't do, things that aren't safe, aren't good, whatever.
Yeah. And
always looking for resources that are deemed safe and good. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this would be so amazing for a pregnant person. So how are you able to support people throughout pregnancy? What are the main benefits of seeing you or someone who does your work when they're pregnant?
On a physical level, in pregnancy, the entire system is changing, right? So
wild.
It's pretty incredible. That way, we're continuing to support, first and foremost, it's like, we're not just supporting the experiences of pregnancy, we're supporting a woman's entire life experience on top of being pregnant. So there is quite a bit to work through with that, and kind of all the physical things that are maybe still in place or holding from prior to being pregnant.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, we're working through that for sure. On another piece in the physical plane, it's like we're working to support this growing space that is holding life, and working to maximize the amount of space that baby has kind of in utero, which is amazing. And that has a direct, you could say, effect on birth and the birth process for sure. I think for me, and what I've been noticing a lot kind of with the women that, I serve that are pregnant, we are working to continue to establish trust and surrender. And I think something that comes up a lot is like helping women remember that their systems literally are designed to do this miraculous thing of growing a human and giving birth without help, right? Like helping women remember that that's totally possible. And again, it's like we're creating safety. Like it's like when there's safety, it's like women have the capacity to tune into that trust and that surrender and that intuitive knowing that their systems can birth a human.
Yeah. Made to do it.
Literally made to do it. And I think it's so beautiful, and it's I don't know, it's so profound because it's not just a pregnancy thing. Like that's a life thing. And I think the carryover effect of when women are pregnant and they can tune into that trust and surrender, it's like that carries over into the rest of their life, and it's really beautiful. Yeah. I think however a woman chooses to give birth is perfect, right? There's if you step back, there's no mistakes, right? Totally. In the grand scheme of things, like it's all happening perfectly and it's all unfolding exactly as it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's like how beautiful it would be to create the most supportive environment possible for a woman to give birth and have a new human come into this world in that space, right? It's like you hear about all the things that can come up in a baby, like colic or like sleep issues or breastfeeding issues, or even the whole like tongue tie thing now, right? It's like outcomes would be much different if we could create an environment that's truly supportive to healing, right?
Yeah.
And not just in baby, but in mom.
Yeah.
First and foremost, it's like baby is just mirroring mom. So how can we create the most supportive internal and external environment for mom to not just give birth, but also to raise a human?
Yeah. I mean, I have not done it. Hopefully one day we'll have the opportunity, but like just the expectation of you go through this 9 months of, to what you were saying before, of your organs moving, so many physiological differences that I think when I educate my clients on it, they're like, wait, what? I'm like, it's crazy how much changes.
Yeah.
Then you are connected to this being, and then it exits, which is a major event, whether it's beautiful, whether it's traumatic, fill in the blank, major.
Yeah.
And then you're expected to keep it alive and, you know, be a food source, a comfort source, a life source for something else. Like, I can't imagine how much that is on somebody. So how can you do everything possible?
And then have to continue with your 9-to-5 job and like not have support of your, you know, traditional or like village culture, you know, it's like, I can't imagine.
It's wild. So I just think anything that we can do to set women and babies and even spouses up for 100%. Success, we can. So I don't know, the last time I was here, I was like, oh, I can't wait to talk to you about this on the podcast because mind's blown. Of course they need nervous system regulation. And I'm sure also just adjustments to deal with the pains that are coming up and the changes and all all the juice.
Absolutely. All the juice.
Well, this has been so fun.
I know.
This has been amazing.
We could go on for hours.
Literally. Well, now we have like the next 3 podcast episode topics already lined up. Anything else coming up for you that you'd want to share about the work that you do that maybe we didn't?
I don't know. I think I just encourage people to do work that you really feel called to. You know, whether it's through Vitalistic Chiropractic care or Reiki or a functional med practitioner or health coach or whatever it is, you know, like there's this term, it's like doing something out of right action, right? And that is action that comes from the heart and not from a place of fear or from a place of ego or from a place of like, somebody told me to do something, you know? So I think the most profound thing that somebody can do for their system, whether it be their nervous system or healing or working through trauma or whatever it is to do the thing that you most feel called to do. And then when that time is up, let it go. You know, our practices are meant to serve us in certain seasons. Some seasons last years, some seasons last weeks. You know, it's all about trusting, trusting yourself, trusting what you feel called to do. You know, however you perceive that.
And giving yourself the space to even
think
about what do I need right now?
Cultivating that space for sure.
My closing question this season is, what is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
I would say
not the giggle.
Well, it's so funny. It's like, it would be trust yourself. For sure. Trust yourself, but also don't be afraid to fully express yourself. In whatever relationship or realm that is.
Cool.
Don't be afraid to authentically express yourself.
I think we all need that.
Yes.
Literally.
For sure.
Where can people find you? How can they contact you? How can they work with you?
I'm on Instagram. My practice Instagram handle is Rhythm Chiropractic Dallas. My personal is Dr. Chris Cole. You can find me on there. My website, all that stuff is on there. Or just search Rhythm Chiropractic Dallas in Google or whatever search bar you use. And then just reach out if you have questions.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. This was so fun.
Thanks for having me.
Yay. Woohoo!